she's going to videotape what I'm talking about today for just for me. It's just for me. And so just so that I want to use it for instructional purposes. So, here's what I left you with the last time we were together. I asked you about remember we had the congregation singing that hymn, so we watched the congregation sing, and I asked you to think about, and go home and think about, and come back and jot something down. I wasn't going to collect it. Are those people, if you remember the singing, you've sung hymns, so you know what it's all about, were they being shaped? We just got finished talking about behavior modification and shaping. Were those people singing hymns? And when you are singing a hymn, are you in fact being shaped? And so, what do you think? What do you think? Are you being shaped? I see people shaking their heads, so let's add some expression to that, some voice to that. What do you say? Are they being shaped? Somebody? Yes.
I would say yes, because it's like a ritual that they do every Sunday, and those of us who've gone to church since we were kids, we go to church now and we sing it without even thinking, because it's like, I don't know, something embedded in us, like it's just what we do.
Okay. So it becomes something that becomes embedded inside of you to do that because you've done it over and over and over again. You've repeated it. So in a way, repeating it ends up being a shaping process, and you're rewarded by doing that because, well, what's the reward? What's the reward for singing in a congregation? What's the reward? Yes. It sounds nice, okay? Does it do more than that, though? What does it do? Yeah?
Not feeling out of place.
Not feeling out of place? Okay, you're not feeling out of place?
Well, like, everyone stands up and you stay sitting down, you feel out of place.
Okay, yeah, I guess you would.
Well, if the congregation's hearts are in the right place, then it's glorifying to God.
Okay, so it's glorifying to God. But what does it do for you?
I was just gonna say, like, everyone's like singing to God together.
Okay, good.
Recognition.
Recognition. Okay. Does it feel good? Does it feel good? Okay, does it minister to your soul?
Fellowship.
It's fellowship, right? It ministers to your soul. You're singing. Everybody else is singing, so you don't want to feel out of place by not singing. There are all kinds of reinforcers going on. Praising God, worshiping, but it also makes you feel good. I mean, sometimes I would think that those hymns would move us to tears, as we sing them and we think about what God has done for us. So, yeah, that's a form of behavior modification. Okay, but those people have chosen to be there, and I have some questions for you to consider. And I'm going to have you pass them out. And I want you to look at these. And you don't have to hand these in. They're kind of rhetorical questions. We're going to talk about them, though. And we're gonna look at the social aspect of behavior today. We're going to move from Skinner to Bandura. And like I told you the other day, that this falls apart because we think. Okay, we think. And we can decide to sabotage this, and we are free will agents. You could probably argue that, but we really are free will agents. And the SR model, the stimulus response model that we so use, keeps us from using that free will. It assumes that we have no free will, that all we are organisms running around being reinforced by stimuli in which we respond to, and that response can either be positive or negative. If it's positive, we do it again, like going to church and singing hymns, because we like the experience. We enjoy it. It speaks to our heart. So we repeat it, and we repeat it, and we repeat it because we enjoy it. But this only goes so far. We are really bound to this model in many, many ways, and we'll look at that in just a second. But what I want to talk about, when we look at Bandura and we look at social learning, I want to take a look at the idea of creation, fall, and redemption. In this model, we look at getting to the heart of what we are doing. And that is a lot more meaningful than simply being reinforced for everything we do and only doing what we do because we're going to get an expected reward or reinforcer out of it. Okay? So for instance, when we teach children, since this is psychology applied to learning, when we teach children, we want to make sure, or we want to look at kids as we understand as fallen nature. God created something good, right? Genesis tells us when God was finished creating, he said what? This is good. This is good. So, but then something happened. We experienced the fall. And as they say, it's, everything else is history after that. We experienced the fall, and now we live in a state of disequilibrium. We live in a state of sin. Okay, so the fall brought sin into the world. And so now instead of when we teach, and we teach God's creation, we'll say students, we understand that at this point, students would be good. But of course, because of the fall and because of sin, students are now not good, but students are now somewhat selfish. Okay? In other words, we think about ourselves first and foremost. Right? Do you do that? Sure you do. Everybody does it. We think of ourselves first. Okay? And so now we have to deal with not necessarily a state of good, but now a state of sin. So as teachers, we might utilize something like a token economy in order to get kids to do what we want them to do, but we're not really getting them to do something because it's good. They're doing it because it's what we want them to do, because we'll give them a reward for it. So this equation, or this theory, says that we need to understand that children, students may be somewhat selfish, but we as teachers need to operate just like God does from this redemptive state. And in this redemptive state, we are giving students grace. Because we want them to learn, we want them to do what it is that we want them to do in order to produce a loving, meaningful relationship with either the subject matter or one another, or the relationship between you and the student. Okay? So the redemptive part of teaching is where we live as teachers. And we extend grace, and this is what it's all about. So when we look at social learning, we're asking the students to engage in learning, not because they have to come to school, not because they're being coerced, or not because they're being influenced by positive or negative reinforcement, but because of the love and the knowledge that they would get as true learners in a grace relationship. Do you see how different that is than this? This says no free will. This says free will. This says free will. And our job, our task as teachers is to be redemptive and redeem those children, redeem those students, so that they are learning because of the love of learning. Okay? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And this fits really well with social learning and Bandura and all of the information, the social cognitive theory of education. Now, you won't see this, unfortunately, on any of your state certification exams, okay? But this is really the heart of the matter, okay? All right, so I've given you some questions to fill out, to think about. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes now, and while I tell Grace she can stop, and thank